This activity can be paired with the HMHS Llandovery Castle presentation by Valour Canada. This activity is appropriate for students or youth in grades 4 to 8. It has been adapted from G. Knox's Lost at Sea activity. Citation can be seen in the bottom right-hand corner of this slide. Downloadable handouts and printables that can be distributed to the participants of this activity can be found in the description of the video. Okay, let's get going. The scenario. You are aboard HMHS Llandovery Castle, almost 1,000 kilometers off the coast of Ireland, when it is torpedoed by German U-boat 86. The ship is quickly sinking, and it appears there is little chance for you and your friends to survive. But you decide not to give up, so you and your friends split up to scavenge some gear. Within 60 seconds, you have found an inflatable life raft as well as a box of matches and decide that you should prepare the raft for escaping from the ship once your friends return. For this activity, don't forget that you have the matches. As soon as you've inflated and launched the dinghy, also known as a raft, your friends are tossing equipment to you. One has salvaged 8 items, another has scored 4. Your other friends return empty-handed, but perhaps there's a chance for your group after all. Now for this scenario, I want you and your group to assume 3 things. First, that U-86 is gone and isn't a threat to you anymore. Second, that your ship's location was unknown when you sank. And third, that you and your friends and your dinghy are all that's left. So by that I mean if there are multiple groups doing this activity, just pretend like your group is alone on the ocean. Okay, all the other groups are nowhere to be seen. Okay, now that the handouts are distributed to everyone, there's a few things I want to point out. So you'll notice on the left-hand side, there's a list of 12 items that you have scavenged from the ship before it sank. Now, to the right of that, you'll notice there are 5 different columns, okay? So there are 5 different parts of this activity, and you do them sequentially. So you begin with part 1 and then part 2, and then 3, 4, and 5, and then the activity is finished. So for part 1, okay, this is the first column. You need to, by yourself, so no talking to your neighbors or anyone, just by yourself, you need to rank in order of importance each of the items in terms of how important each is for you to survive. Okay, so if you rank something 1, that means that's the most important thing. Okay, 2 is the second most important, and since there are 12 items, the least important item you're going to put a number 12 beside. If you want to write a few notes beside each item to describe the reasoning why you ranked it the way you did, that's fine, but you don't have to do that. You can do it if you think it'll help. Another important point about this is that once you use a number once, you can't use it again. So, for example, you can only have one most important thing. You can only have one third most important thing. So your third most important thing is going to be 3. Your 6th most important thing is going to be 6. Your 11th is going to be 11. Okay? And again, another reminder, don't forget that your group has matches. Now, once you're finished number 1, part 1, the first column, everyone else in your group is finished, then you can go ahead to part 2, where you do the exact same thing, only you do it within your group. So this is going to require discussion amongst your group, and you're going to have to come up with a consensus on where you're going to rank each item. Okay, now that's going to take a little bit longer because you're going to have to talk your way through it. Part 3, this is where I'm going to put the answer as provided by a professional sailor. I'm going to put that up on the on the presentation, and you're just going to copy those numbers in the part 3. And then from there, we're going to complete parts 4 and 5, which I'm going to explain here on the next slide. So I'm just going to take you through this again. So like I mentioned, part 1 you do individually. So that's this column here. And if you think the chocolate bars are the most important thing, you're going to put a 1 beside that. Okay. If you think the water is the 5th most important thing, you're going to put a 5 right here. Okay. So you do this part 1 by yourself. Okay. Your rank. Now part 2 is the section you do as your group. So that's this column here. Okay, so let's say that your group thinks that the chocolate bars are actually the 4th most important thing. So your group agrees and they put a 4 in here. Okay, now part 3, this is the answer, which I'm going to give you on the next slide. I can't give it to you before you do your own ranking, or it kind of defeats the purpose of the activity. Okay, so I'll give you all these answers, and then the way to do part 4 and part 5, so you'll notice part 4 is you, okay, so individually, and it's the difference between part 1 and 3. So when you look at part 1 and part 3, we got 1 for part 1, and we've got 6 for part 3. Well, what's the difference between 1 and 6? Well, the difference is 5. So you write 5 in here, okay? And you do that the whole way down, and then you total it up, and that's your individual score, okay? This is your individual score. Now for part 5, this is going to be how you get your group score, and it's the difference between part 2 and 3, okay? So part 2, your group decided to 4, and then the professional rank is 6. So what's the difference between 4 and 6? 2. So you put 2 in here, and as a group you do this the whole way down the column, and then you get your total here. Okay, so just a bit of a heads up, your group should have the same numbers in part 2, right? So if that's the case, then everybody should have the same numbers in part 5 too. So you really only need one person in your group to do part 5. Okay, so here is the ranking from a professional sailor. Okay, so I'm just going to read these out to you, go through. So the chocolate bars are actually 6. The shaving mirror is the most important thing. Okay, and the reasoning is this is the best tool you have to be found on the ocean, because you can reflect the sunlight into the sky or at the horizon, and it allows airplanes and boats to be able to see you more easily. The least important thing is the compass. So you should have a 12 there. Water is 3. Rations, so food, is 4. Maps are 11, because you can't really, you don't have any oars, you don't have any motor, so even if you knew where you were, you can't really do anything. The rum, 10. The oil gasoline mixture, 2. Okay, I'll come back to that. The rope, 8. The plastic sheet, 5. The shark repellent, which is a real thing, 9. And then the fishing kit is 7. Now, the reason the oil and gas mixture is so high is because you have the matches. So the thinking is that you can put this out in the water, okay? Oil doesn't mix with water, so you can put it in the water and you should be able to start it on fire, and then you're making yourself more visible again. Okay, now personally I think it's kind of dangerous, because what if you accidentally the fire touched your raft and you got a hole in it, and like I don't know, but I'm not a professional sailor, so that's my thinking. anyhow. Okay, so now that you and your group have their total scores, you can see how you rank on this exercise. And important to note that a lower score in this exercise is actually better. And it kind of makes sense if you think about it, right? Because you're you're adding up the difference between your rank and the professional's rank. So the further you are from the professional rank is going to give you a higher number. And if you add up higher numbers, you're going to have a higher score, which is actually indicative that you are further away from what the professional sailor said. Okay, now just to give you a bit of an idea where people normally score on this. So for this activity, usually it's about 90% of the group has a higher score than 51. Okay, and a lot of people are over, like pretty much everybody is over 60. Now there might be a few cadets in the group that have done something similar before and they'll have a much better score, but generally speaking, most people do not survive this activity. And here are a couple questions for discussion. First off, if your personal score was better than the team's, why do you suppose that happened? In contrast, why do you suppose that the team score was better than your individual score? Secondly, what were some noted advantages or disadvantages while completing this exercise by yourself or as part of a group? Third, did your group have a leader? If so, how was the leader chosen? Maybe it wasn't chosen, maybe it just kind of evolved. If you didn't have a leader, how did your group manage the discussion? Thoughts, anyone? And lastly, which three characteristics are most important for a good teammate to have? Okay, so think about any clubs or group schoolwork you've done in the past, or maybe you play sports. What are some important characteristics for good teammates to have? And what about on the raft? Any differences there?